pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Before we go to public participation, I'd like to move directly to the election of Board of Education officers, and I'd like to do these one by one, starting with the president. And so first, I'd like to call to see if there are any nominations for the office of president of the board. I see Dr. Yarborough's hand.
Yes, I move to nominate Yesenia Rivera as president of our board.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Joyner made the second. Are there any other nominations for president of the Board of Education? Any other nominations? Okay, I'd like to close the nominations for president of the board. Is there any discussion on the nomination of Ms. Rivera? Okay, I'd like to proceed to the vote. Then all those in favor, and I'll call you individually, Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Goldson? Mr. Goldson? Mr. Goldson? Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Ms. Rivera?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So there were 6 votes of yes, and Mr. Goldson did not unmute. So congratulations, Ms. Rivera, and thank you for stepping up again. And you've been elected re-elected president of the board. Moving on to vice president, are there any nominations for vice president of the Board of Education? Dr. Benitez, I see your hand.
Yes, I would like to nominate Mr. Matt Wilcox.
Is a nomination for Matt Wilcox on the board or on the floor? Is there a second?
I second.
Dr. Yarborough just beat you, Dr. Joyner. There's a second from Dr. Yarborough. Are there any other nominations for vice president? Any other nominations for vice president? Any other nominations? So I'd like to close the nominations. Is there any discussion on this nomination? Okay, so I'd like to move forward with the vote for Mr. Wilcox as Vice President of the Board of Education. Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Goldson? Mr. Goldson? Mr. Goldson? Ms. Rivera?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Congratulations to Mr. Wilcox. Thank you again for stepping up, and congratulations on your reelection. Finally, I'd like to open the floor up for nominations for secretary. I see Ms. Rivera's hand.
I nominate Dr. Joyner for secretary of this board.
There's a nomination for Dr. Edward Joyner on the table. Is there a second?
I second.
Dr. Benitez made the second. Are there any other nominations for secretary? Any other nominations for secretary? I'd like to close the nominations. Any discussion on these nominations? The nomination? Any discussion? Okay. I'd like to call on the members to vote. Ms. Rivera?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Goldson? Mr. Goldson? Mr. Goldson? And I'm a yes as well. Dr. Joyner has been re-elected secretary. Dr. Joyner, thank you for your service and for being willing to continue to serve as well. So with that, the 3 members of the executive committee here have been re-elected, and I will pass the baton over to Ms. Rivera, to the re-elected president, to take over the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. And thank you, Dr. Yarborough, for the nomination and to my colleagues of this board for the vote of confidence. I'm excited to for the work ahead as we move forward with the work of hiring the district superintendent, although I'm sure it's going to be an arduous process. I'm excited to get this completed. Before we start, I am going to move the executive session items before the public comment so that Attorney Sierra Milan can log off to attend her next meeting with the Board of Alders. Attorney Alexiadis, can you let her know that she can come in to the executive session once we're voting? I'm again going to say that I think the agenda is such that we should be able to move through it fairly quickly. So please be succinct with your committee reports and the discussion as much as possible. Also, in order to give everyone an opportunity to speak on a specific item, I'm going to ask if anyone else would like to speak on the item before calling on a board member who has already spoken on said item. And so I'll try to move forward that way with the board meetings going forward. So with that said, I'm going to vote that we go into executive session regarding NHFT negotiations concerning compensation for teachers in before and after school programs. And we would invite Dr. Tracy, Attorney Alexiadis, and Attorney Sierra Milan. For a second, Mr. Wilcox,
Second.
any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to go into executive session. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson, Ms. Rahman. Students are not on today, okay. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so that motion carries. Attorney Alexiadis,
Before you all disappear, Attorney Milan needs the link and so do I. For the
oh, okay.
session.
Viviana, tell her to look for Viviana. Viviana Connor sent the link.
I'm sending it. I'm making sure she sends it now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we'll see you in the executive session. Viviana
good.
Connor sent the link. Thanks. We're all back. Yep. We're all back. So we are now out of executive session and back in regular session. There were no votes in executive session. However, there will be some motions coming up now. The first one would be a motion to approve memorandum of agreement between the Board of Ed and NHAFT regarding compensation for before and after school programs. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on that item. Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
students are still not on. Mr. Golton,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So that
Yep.
item carries.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to authorize the superintendent to sign the memorandum of agreement between the New Haven Board of Education and the New Haven Federation of Teachers.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on that item. Dr. Benitez,
Muted. Yes.
yes. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Golton,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. And so that item passes. And so we'll go back to the beginning of the agenda and go back to public participation, Dr. Joyner and Dr. White.
Okay, I'm ready. I just want to remind people that they have 3 minutes to speak. When your time is up, I'll say time and you should complete your sentence.
Okay, attendees, if anyone wishes to address the board, please raise your hand. And we have one, and then we'll go to Mr. Goldson afterwards. Anna Marvin, you may speak.
Good evening. My name is Anna Marvin, and I'm a junior at Southern Connecticut State University, majoring in elementary education. I'm also a full-time para at the New Haven Public Schools. My first encounter with New Haven Public Schools was as a field experience student last year. I immediately adored the students and staff, and I ended up working at the same school as a tutor and then as a para this year. As I have learned more and more about issues facing education, I have become aware and increasingly concerned about the teacher shortage. This is a huge issue nationwide and within Connecticut in the New Haven Public Schools. Looking at the New Haven Public Schools AppleTrack page, there are over 170 open positions for teachers and other staff. As an education student, I can attest that young adults are wary to go into teaching. Several people who are in my freshman courses as education majors have changed majors. Many students have told me that they would love to teach and love working with youth. That is not the problem. Young people want to be teachers, but they are concerned about low pay, lack of respect, lack of resources, and the teacher shortage, which will make their jobs harder. This is a nationwide trend. The American Association for Colleges for Teacher Education recorded a 35% drop in enrollment in traditional teacher prep programs between the 2008 and 2009 and 2018-2019 year. This data is yet to reflect current numbers, which in the wake of COVID, I suspect to be even worse. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, at the beginning of the 2022-2023 school year, 69% of K-12 schools reported they did not have enough teachers applying for positions. This school district, along with others nationwide, need to come up with a plan to not only attract new teachers, but retain current ones. According to the NEA, 80% of teachers say that teacher burnout is a major problem. 55% are ready to leave teaching sooner than they planned, and 80% indicate that the additional work they take on because of the teacher shortage is a major problem. Our students deserve better. Our teachers and staff deserve better. I care deeply about the students I interact with on a daily basis. The students of New Haven deserve to attend schools with sufficient staffing to educate them. The blame for this issue does not fall on teachers and staff. Teachers are not leaving because they do not care about their students. Teachers are leaving as the cost of living rises and they must do more with less, becoming burnt out. As a future teacher, I am passionate about education and believe that every student has the right to a high quality education. As a future teacher, I face the future with excitement, but also worry that those in position to address this problem will not do so. I want to know what the New Haven Public Schools and the state of Connecticut is going to do about this, because we are not on the verge of a crisis. We are in a crisis now. Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, I acknowledge Mr. Goldson.
Thank you. In four or five meetings in as many months, I've asked for the score sheets from the approved cleaning contract. I still have not received them. I believe I did an official FOI request about a week or two ago. Since my requests through this board are not being responded to, I hope I get those soon. FOI emails between the board members and communications director request that I made has not been responded to as of yet, or I have not received those materials as of yet. I did not receive a briefing as I requested of the student transfer at Brennan Rogers School and had to read in the newspaper a day or two ago about an update that was given to the reporters, but wasn't given to a board member. So that's disappointing. Of course, we had the meeting with the Commissioner of Education, but that was through the state legislators as opposed to through this board. That was disappointing. I would like to again request that this board start meeting at least hybridly in person and remotely if they don't want to go completely in person. Thank you.
Madam President, that concludes the raised hands.
Thank you, Dr. White and Dr. Joyner. Let's move on to the next item, which is the approval of the board meeting minutes for December 12th and December 22nd. Your motion, Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I move we approve the board minutes from December 12th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think there might be a correction. I might be wrong, but I thought Mayor Elica joined the meeting later. And so is that correct, or am I wrong about that?
I wonder if that was a special meeting. I don't remember.
I don't know. I know it was one meeting where
I did join one meeting later. I have to.
Okay, I'm gonna trust the recording secretary then. She's pretty good. So in fact, she's exceptional. So I withdraw that statement. I think it was the special meeting.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further discussion, we'll go to approve the board meeting minutes of December 12th, 2022. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, so that item carries. Next would be the minutes for December 22nd, 2022. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes, I move that we approve the minutes of the special board meeting on December 22nd, 2022.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the minutes for December 22nd. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
I'm sorry, I wasn't in attendance.
okay. Thank you. So you're abstaining. Thank you. Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. And so that item carries.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes, Dr. Joyner.
I think I was correct. The first minutes that we approved had Mayor Elicker absent, but according to my notes, he did come in later,
Yeah.
so he was present.
My apologies, Madam Chair. I just checked my calendar and I showed up late to that meeting, but I wasn't attending to that.
Yeah.
Okay,
And, so
so
if
approve the minutes with that correction.
right.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll move on to the personnel report. Dr. Tracy. The action items of the personnel report.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year to all. I'm excited about 2023, and there's reason for my excitement for 2023. So here we are at the threshold, the beginning of the new year. We have, in terms of appointment, 5 teachers, and then we have 10 resignations, primarily physical education and special education. And then after this, I'll say something about those who are retiring. So I ask the board to approve these action items.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes, Madam President, I move that we approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report.
for a second.
Madam Chair, I
A
second the
second.
motion.
Oh, Dr. Benitez, Dr. Joyner beat you to the punch. Any, any discussion? Mr. Goldson?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to note for the record that although we are hiring 4 teachers and 3 paras, we're losing 11 teachers and 5 paras. So we're still on a negative side, as a young lady mentioned earlier today, in our recruitment processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Dr. Tracy? Oh,
Okay,
where else? Okay, hold on. Who seconded? Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote to approve the action items of the personnel report. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes,
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, so that item carries. Dr. Tracy, did you want to go over
Okay,
the other?
thank you again. There is definitely, everyone knows that there is a staff shortage, not just among teachers, but across the spectrum of across the spectrum of the work in the district. Staff is working very hard to tell friends, to recruit, to do whatever they need to do to entice staff to come to work in New Haven. Please note that we hire teachers now under the current contract. We're hoping that when the new contract chips in for next year, we will have more staff because the contract is more, what should I say? It's a much better contract for teachers. We continue the bleeding, even though we also have a raise coming in. What was a bonus coming in for staff for January? These are things that, from my knowledge and talking to superintendents, just about most school districts have encountered and continue to encounter. People are leaving for various reasons. Some of them are not even leaving to go into teaching. They're leaving to go into other things. So whatever is happening across the spectrum of teaching, we just have to make sure that we do our best in recruiting as much as we can. That's all we can do. As I say to my staff, I can't create teachers, I can't create security, I can't create paraprofessional, but we will try as much as we can with the salary and benefits that we have now. We are negotiating with the powers right now. I'm going to negotiation with the powers to make sure at least there is a livable wage for everybody who is involved. And that's about what we can do. I have authorized my staff to go outside of New Haven, to go to different places. The places they're going to, they're also suffering from teacher shortage. So, but we will try our best. I want to give special commendation to the folks who are retiring. And when I say special commendation, we're looking at 235 years of service combined for 8 of our staff members who are retiring this year. That's a lot of historical knowledge, institutional knowledge in New Haven Public Schools. We have Pamela Augustine Jefferson has done 32 years. Valjean Belton from Co-op has done 38 years. Lynn Brantley, 37 years. Kathleen Maddern, 36 years. Gail, who is our Director of Food Service, 10 years. Jonathan Wilson, who has been with us forever. Jonathan, 38 years. And then we have Joan D'Angelo and Brenda Moore, account clerks from our offices who are also retiring. That's a great loss to New Haven Public School, but I must commend them for giving so much of their time to New Haven Public School. That's what you call real dedication and staying with it. So their stick-to-itiveness, their perseverance, their commitment to New Haven Public Schools is to be commended. I want to thank them. Hope the board will give them applause for spending so many years supporting the program, supporting students of New Haven Public Schools. And that's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Dr. Benitez?
I just want to say that I have to agree with Dr. Tracy that we are going to definitely miss these people. These are people who, of course, I'm biased. I work with and know how hard they've worked throughout the years in New Haven, how committed they are to our children. And I'm sure that their colleagues will really miss them. So I hope you enjoy retirement. It is a wonderful thing to be retired. And if you're a New Haven resident, think about doing Board of Ed work. Or if you are in any other district, you might want to consider that so that you continue to contribute to education. Thank you for your service. We are truly humbled by this group of people who are leaving. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Okay, does that conclude your?
Madam Chair, I have
Dr. Joyner,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Yeah, I directed the teacher prep program at Sacred Heart, and I'm very familiar with all the stuff that's been said about teachers, but Dr. Tracy makes a good point. It's a challenge with human capital, period. And it's a challenge. It's not just a challenge in the United States, it's a worldwide challenge. I have contacts with people all over. And we're going to have to make some bold changes at the state and federal level if we're going to attract people to the profession of teaching. And we're also going to have to do some very strong things about the conduct of outlier students in schools, because some people are literally afraid to work in schools. My niece's school in Newport News, Virginia, a 6-year-old kid shot a teacher. There are no sacred places left in this country. The church is not safe. The movies are not safe. Schools are not safe. And this is not just a problem for the board or superintendent. It's a problem for the entire nation to provide incentives for people to come into the profession. Some of the policies in the 60s worked. They forgave national defense student loans if you worked in a high poverty district. They forgave 20% of the loan for every year you worked in a high poverty district. And it's not just the money, but it is a teacher feeling like he or she can go into a building and do what they are taught to do in a safe and orderly environment. And one of my best friends is the chair of the Board of Regents in New York. His name is Dr. Lester Young. And my other best friend is the commissioner, Dr. Betty Rosa. And if you were to talk to them, they would tell you that they are bleeding teachers, particularly in high poverty and urban areas. And it's going to take a political solution. And I think we're going to have to rethink schools. We cannot allow violent people to be in our schools. We have to help them, but we can't do it, because if you can imagine in any environment, when the language becomes violent and the physical actions become violent, people are not built to deal with that, and no one should have to. So wherever you have where you have really serious problems, you have to have bold solutions. Whatever it takes to make the environment safe and orderly, whatever it takes to create conditions where teachers can teach in peace and students can learn in peace, we're going to have to do. And I'm just hoping that we'll have the will to do it, and to also provide alternatives for students that need some time to understand how important education is and how important it is to treat people with respect. It is the worst I've ever seen it in my 75 years of living on this earth. And COVID exacerbated it. So excuse my lengthy statements, but it's beyond us. It goes all the way up to the top, and top down, bottom up. And we have to work with the unions to get this done as well, because they're part of the solution. They're not part of the problem. We have good union leadership across the country and in this community, and we have to work with them, and we have to help parents understand that as well. But I have sympathy for parents, because I know of situations where some of these kids are violent in their own homes with their parents. And we're going to have to come to grips with that. I know it doesn't sound good, but it's real. I'm finished, Madam Chair, and I yield the floor.
All right, I said a whole lot. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Golson, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I like to make decisions based on data. I mean, for me, that's important. And though I give Dr. Joyner a lot of leeway with his assumptions around why teachers are leaving, because he's been in this education business for such a long time, I still don't have any evidence in front of me that what he's saying is the overarching reason for teachers leaving. It may be true, but I don't know. And I don't know because that data is not being provided to us by this superintendent and this administration. It is not being provided to us either because they don't want us to know or because they're not collecting the data. The fact is that every time a teacher leaves, especially a teacher that leaves in the middle of the school year, we should be having some sort of exit interview. We should get, I mean, they may be leaving because they're sick. They may be leaving because they have a sick relative they have to take care of. They may be leaving because they just don't want to teach anymore. They may be leaving because kids are violent in their school and they don't want to be there. But I'm tired of hearing over and over again that our school system is not functioning because we have bad kids in our school, or we have kids that are not that are acting out in our schools. I don't know how true that is. And the evidence that we've gotten so far, the information that we've gotten so far, has not pointed to that. We haven't gotten good, clean information on discipline in our schools, and we haven't gotten any information as to why our teachers are leaving, especially those in the middle of the school year. And I implore this board again to start forcing this administration to collect that information and report to us on it so that we can make decisions. So if we're talking about holding the state and the federal government to bold moves, we ought to do at least a bold move. I don't even consider it bold, but we should at least have a bold move where we're where we're collecting information as to why these teachers are leaving. And we may not like the answers. Maybe they don't like the way they're being managed. Maybe they don't like the discipline of the kids in the school. I don't know. So I hope that this board will eventually make the bold move and ask this administration to start providing that data to us. That is our job, to interpret that data and make decisions based on that data. Their job is to provide the data. And we keep hearing over and over again these anecdotes that everybody's having problems. Everybody's losing teachers. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm on the Board of Education in the city of New Haven, and I can't tell you why these 11 teachers are leaving. Well, I can tell you one is retiring. I can't tell you why the other 10 teachers are leaving. And that is our shame, our problem, because we're not even asking for the information. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Golson, Mr. Wilcox?
Thank you. I'll just say that the Finance and Operations Committee did take a look at this in January of last year. We could take a look at it again this year. We did look at retention data, as I recall from the testimony. It was mixed data in terms of the amount of exit interviews that they were able to get from folks. And then also, I had some anecdotal conversations with people where they were talking about whether or not that they were honest in their exit interview or what the data looked like. But we can take another look at that again, like we did a year ago. And, annual look at data is probably a good thing. And I also know from conversations that for the information around teachers, the teachers union was also collecting information, so we could ask them for their view on it as well, to supplement other information that the administration has talked about and how it compares to the national trends. So we could do that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Ms. Fletcher? Did I pronounce it right?
Flegler, but you close.
Flegler. Okay, got it.
Yes. So good evening, board. I just wanted to comment on Mr. Golson's and also Mr. Wilcox's comments. So Mr. Golson, we do send out exit interview surveys. Unfortunately, we cannot force exited employees to mandate them to get that information, and the teachers union have been also getting information from the teachers that depart from the district. Some will give us some vague information, but the real data, in order to collect the data, we do have a process. The data is sent out to the exited employee. And unfortunately, sometimes we get information back, sometimes we do not. We certainly are open and willing to share what we have collected. And so that's not an issue as far as the data, but we cannot mandate any employee. We don't just do it for teachers, we do it for all employees. And so we have a Google Docs in place. Since our onboarding of our new recruitment coordinator, it's a very clear and concise, specific questions on how we can improve. And we even asked when teachers are leaving middle of the year or right now during the times where learning is happening, we ask them they can stay an extra 30 days. Some say yes, some do not. And I know this has been said over and over again, but you're gonna keep hearing it. It is a national shortage. Teachers are leaving the field of education. It's not just New Haven, it's happening across the state, across the country. But I hear you. I think data is important, and if we have the data, we'll share the data. But unfortunately, we're not always getting that information back in a timely manner by the way we're requesting the data. So we can try some other ways of possibly saying we can get more feedback. We are looking at having one-on-one meetings outside the office in order to ensure that the exiting employee is willing to sit down and talk with someone outside the office, because sometimes they're fearful of retaliation if they say something against an administrator or another one of their colleagues. So we've tried different ways to collect that data, that information, but it's not always, it doesn't happen just overnight. And I'm not saying that you're suggesting it does, but it's not easy to collect that information. So I just wanted to just let you know that we do have a process in place as far as to how to ensure where everyone has an opportunity to share their reason for why they're exiting the district.
Thank you, Ms. Flegler.
You're welcome.
Mr. Golson?
Thank you, Madam President. With all due respect to Ms. Flegler, who I knew who was Ms. Mack. And I also know her husband, Mr. Flegler, for almost as long as I've known other members in my family. So this is not and I have been advocating for a long time to provide additional resources to her department so that she could do the kind of things that folks like Hartford are doing, that have 24 folks in their department as opposed to 3 or 4 in our department. So I understand how understaffed she is, but I don't even think it's about staffing, quite frankly. If I were a person who was leaving this school system and I had some things that I wanted to say, but I was afraid to say them because I was afraid they were going to get back to the people I said them about, I may want to come back to the system, or I may want to go somewhere else, and I don't want those comments to follow me. I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to comment. It's not worth it to possibly hurt my career. So we ought to be, as I said, bold, and we should have a third party that is collecting these exit interviews so that people are anonymous, so that they are protected from possible perceived retaliation. There may not be anything going on, but certainly the folks are going to perceive. If I say something bad about the administrator who was managing me, then that's going to follow me. And it may stop me from ever being able to come back to the system if I wanted to come back. So we should, us trying to collect the information, we're going to get the same results every time. We're not going to get those responses unless I have something good to say, or unless I'm so upset that I don't even care what I say to you, that it gets back to whoever it's going to get back to. So again, we need to be bold. We need to do things a different way. And we can't move forward without having that data. So we can't have excuses why we can't get it. We have to find reasons and ways to get it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Golson. Any further discussion? Dr. Tracy, does that conclude your report? Oh, you muted.
Yes, that concludes my report.
Thank
And
you.
I open to any board member to send whatever suggestions they have other than the things we are already doing. Send your suggestions. Members of the public, anybody, send your suggestions as to how you think we can recruit and retain teachers, because it's everybody's business. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. All right, so we'll move on to finance and operations. Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you very much. As is typical, if anybody has anything they'd like to move separately, please let me know. Mr. Golson, you had an item you wanted to move separately? You're muted, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, which item?
Agreements number 2, 3, 7, and 8.
2, 3, 7, and 8.
And you can move those as a group. I'm just going to vote against them as a group. So
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to those, I'm going to make a motion to add something to the agenda. We had an agreement. We had a special meeting with the Finance and Operations Committee meeting. We had an issue with the Little Scientists agreement, in that there were 2 agreements and one was left off. And so we had a meeting today to review that. So this information and the backup materials was posted in publicly, and for the meeting. It's also part of the board packets for this meeting as well. So I'm going to make a motion here, and that is that we add to the agenda an agreement with Little Scientists to provide a science exploration program for students at Brennan Rogers School from January 10th, 2023 to June 30, 2023, in an amount not to exceed $32,400.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Any discussion? Mr. Golson?
I'm sorry, are we voting on the special meeting items? Is that what, the motion is to amend the agenda? Is that the motion?
The amend the agenda, yep,
Okay, thank you.
okay. So no further discussion, we'll go to amend the agenda to include.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, Madam President. I'm gonna vote to no to amend the agenda because I didn't hear about this special meeting until I got the board package on Friday, I guess it was. So I didn't know about it until I read the package this morning. Even though I got it on Friday, I did not open this package until today. I was not aware of the meeting until it was already over because it was at 9:30 in the morning. I'm wondering what process we use to let board members know that there's a special meeting. Because I know I looked through my emails and I didn't see any notification of it, any email to the board. I didn't see any texts. I'm going to vote against this because I just didn't have enough time to actually review it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. All right, now seeing no further discussion, we'll move to amend the agenda to include the little scientist item. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
No.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, so that item carries.
All right, thank you. So that's added into the mix. I guess the first thing I'll do is move the separated out items first. So I move that we approve agreements 2, 3, 7, and 8 as listed in our agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Any discussion? Mr. Goldson?
Thank you, Madam President. I have been suggesting the last couple of meetings, and Dr. Joyner used to suggest this all the time, that we should have data from contracts that we have already had in place, showing, evaluating those programs, telling us how they worked, how many students were involved, what the outcomes were, so on. We don't have that. We're still not getting that information for most, if not all, of these contracts. For number 3, which is a new contract, again, this person is getting paid the equivalent of a new teacher salary, but he's not working new teacher hours. He's only working a few hours a month, but he's getting $22,000, whereas a teacher works 8 hours a day for that month and gets the same kind of salary. So for those reasons, I just don't understand why we would pay that kind of money to a new contractor to provide leadership training for a couple hours a month. So I'm going to vote against that for that reason. And again, I'm voting against these others because I just don't have any evidence in front of me that the work they've done in the past has moved the needle for this school system and for those kids. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Mr. Wilcox?
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be voting to support these. We did discuss them in the Finance and Operations Committee meeting. We had testimony related to the programs. We were able to ask the questions that we have. I just would point out that I'm hoping we do pay our teachers more than $22,000 in a 6-month period. I imagine at the very low end for an entry-level teacher, I'd have to look at the exact data to see how that factors out, because this is, I believe, a 6-month coverage on this. But we had the testimony for it. I would suggest if board members would please take a look at the draft, and I can send it to everybody. The draft, we're redoing the cover memo and clarifying what we expect in terms of evaluation data. So we've looked at evaluation data in the past. We can ask for it again. And we do often have questions related to it, as people like Dr. Yarbrough could attest, because that's something that he's been very interested in, and he's helping us to update the forms so that we're getting the meaningful data to see if these things are working correctly. I'll also add that it was in the packets is information from Ms. Joseph Lumpkin's department on how they handle after-school programs, selection process, request for qualifications, and so on. And I believe there's also a section on how they do evaluations. So I'll just direct people that in general, these programs are evaluated. And if there's specific data we want to see, we can certainly ask for that moving forward. But for tonight, I'm going to support these items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Before I go to, Dr. Joyner, go ahead.
Yeah, I have been assured that Ms. Joseph Lumpkin has very high standards for the programs in terms of attendance. And she and her support staff are very often at the sites looking at the program. And I also know that in the turnaround schools that Ms. Connor is in the room in a lot of these programs. And so I'll have to side with Mr. Wilcox. It doesn't mean we can't do better, but I think that since we did talk about evaluation, I know that I've been in meetings with Gemma and with Viviana where we talk about program effects, and I think at the end of the year we're going to have some really good news to report on some of the programs that we have specifically in the turnaround schools. So again, we can always do better, but it's really not accurate to say that nothing is being evaluated.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Okay, Mr. Golson.
Thank you, Madam President. I never said nothing was being evaluated. That's not a comment that I made. What I said is we're not receiving evaluations. We don't know how these programs are being evaluated. Now, maybe Dr. Joyner is sitting down with people and getting some feel-good stories about what's going on, but we're not getting subjective written information as to how these programs are being evaluated and what those programs are doing to move the needle. We don't know how many kids are attending these programs. We don't know what kind of kids are attending these programs. We don't know how the programs are functioning from day 1 to day 31 or day 61 or whatever it is. I'm glad that Dr. Joyner feels good about it and is assured about it. I'm not, because I haven't gotten the information. And I have requested the information. I know Dr. Joyner in the past has requested the information, and I've never seen a written evaluation yet for one program that we have approved with this at this board, not just before and after school programs, but every program that we're paying for. Every program that we're paying for, we should at the end of the year get some sort of evaluation telling us how it's working, how it's not working, how it's being improved, if it needs to be improved. And we're not getting that. Or at least I'm not getting that. I certainly haven't seen it in writing. My colleague, Mr. Wilcox says he's not sure about the starting teacher salaries. Look at the blue sheet. On our blue sheet today, we have two starting teachers, one at 47, one at 45. And at the last blue sheet, we had a couple at 42, 44. So yes, $22,000 for 6 months is a half a starting teacher's salary. Literally half and we're not talking about half with the same hours. We're talking about half at maybe 10 hours a month. You know, I couldn't tell. I read the document, so I couldn't tell exactly how many hours a month this person was doing. I guess I didn't do the math. I didn't do the subtraction and multiplication and division, but I can tell you it's no more than 10 hours a month that this person is working and getting $22,000 over 6 months, whereas our teachers are working 8 hours a day, 20 days a month, and getting less, literally half of what this person's getting. So that's my response. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Golson. Seeing no further discussion, we'll vote to approve agreements 2, 3, 7, and 8. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner. Dr. Joyner? You're muted, Dr. Joyner. All right, we'll come back to Dr. Joyner. Mr. Goldson,
No.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Dr. Joyner? Okay.
Point of order, Madam President.
No vote, for Dr. Joyner. Mr. Goldson?
Point of order, is the finance chairman going to move those two special meeting items separately or as a group with the other items?
I'm sure.
I would request that he moves them separately.
Yeah, let's just finish our vote. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we voted finished. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to do. Okay, and so that item carries because I am a yes as well.
I'm
Mr.
voting yes as well.
Wilcox. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So just to clarify, we added one item to the agenda. So the special meeting, we did talk about two because we were clarifying because there was two little scientists projects and or two little scientists agreements and only one was listed. So we just talked about them both again to clarify the differences between the two. So it is, I'm going to move the item that we added. I move that we approve the agreement with the little scientists to provide a science exploration program for students at Brennan Rogers School.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Any discussion? Mr. Goldson?
Again, I'm going to vote no as I did for adding the item to the agenda because I didn't get notification of the meeting. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. See no discussion, we'll vote to approve the little scientists agreement. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
No.
Mayor Elicker. Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, and I am a yes as well, and so that item carries.
Point of order, Madam President.
Mr. Goldson?
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused, so please bear with me for a moment. I'm looking at the special meeting agenda, and I see that there's two items. Could the chairman please explain to me again what's going on with this?
So if you look at, you'll see there are two items that were listed on the special meeting.
Yes.
You'll also see that one of the items that I believe you just voted against, which was number 8, is one of those items that was on the special meeting.
Got it. Okay,
Because we
thank you
had
very much.
two agreements with little scientists. What made it on the regular F&O agenda was only one of the two. And then there was a mix up with the backup material, whether or not the right backup material was linked to in the meeting, additional meeting or information link on the finance and operations. So in order to clarify everything, we just talked about both to make sure that everybody was on the same page. So only the one item was added.
Thank you.
All right. And so I'll make a motion. This will be the final motion for the finance and operations items. And that is, I move that we approve the 2 abstracts, the remaining 7 agreements that were recommended for approval by the Finance and Operations Committee.
A second.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to approve the remaining F&O items. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so those items carried. Moving on to the students aren't in, I didn't receive Actually, I did receive on the. comments. Let me get it really quick. Um. Give me 1 second while I open it in my email. I didn't realize he wasn't coming to the meeting, otherwise I would have had it queued up. And so it says Socialist Scholars Party. Oh, it's not. I guess they had a meeting on this in December 22nd with 40+ students present at the citywide student council assembly. Approximately 45 students participated in the meeting. I'm trying to find the highlights, but it's not easy to do that. The meeting was part of a phase 2 synthesization and definitions of the 2022-2020 phase plan for citywide student council meetings. They focus on guiding students to articulate a list of goals and demands based on the top concern that they voted on back in October, which was the lack of community safety and accountability. I'll forward the report to you all just so we have the full, because I'm just kind of going through the highlights. From here, the party will gather a working group of community organizers, of social workers, reading workers, mental health professionals, teachers, students, and other community stakeholders to review, synthesize, and draft a list of demands that are aligned with the comments, sentiments, and visions expressed by the students, and ongoing political and social campaigns to align with students' visions. So there's a timeline of January 24. The party will integrate all 24 new members into different teams and survey stakeholders to create a working group. I guess all of January, there's a working group of community stakeholders that'll be created to review worksheets, answers, and draft an action plan. Also, Citywide Student Council will be an organizing one-on-one training. And then in February, the Citywide Student Council will propose amendments to the draft action plan and or vote to accept and or deny it. And that's the end of the report, although I didn't read the entire report. I just gave you what I think were the highlights. But I will forward that report on. Actually, he sent it to everyone, so I don't have to do that. So you should have it in your emails.
Madam President,
Mr. Golson?
since this, is this the official student report?
That was his report that he mailed to the entire board, yes.
Then perhaps you should forward that to the recording secretary so it could be included in the notes or something. I mean, there should be some official record of it.
Yep. Okay,
So,
will do. Thank you. Yep, I can do that. Dr. Joyner, you had your hand raised, but now it's down. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was asking, was this a report of some party I heard, or was it a report of the student?
It does say the heading, the logo says Student Socialist Party or something like that.
That might be a problem, but I won't bring it up now because it's not on the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Dr. Yarborough and then Mr. Goldson.
Yes, just something the report says is that, I mean, the heading is one thing. This is a report of the student city council meeting, and there was a conversation about the Scholars Party, and students were given an opportunity from the report. Students were given an opportunity to sign up if they wanted to do additional work based on the priorities that the Citywide Student Council Assembly determined during their past meetings of 2022.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goldson?
I think it's a little confusing because I attended a citywide student council meeting, I guess about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I can't remember the exact date. And none of this stuff was discussed. So I'm not sure. I mean, Mr. Cruz Bustamante is the student representative. So I guess whatever report he gives is the student representative reports. I don't know if it actually, this report doesn't seem to reflect what I heard at the student council, citywide student council meeting that I went to, but I think they're like two separate organizations. And there may be other student organizations that he may or may not be a part of. But I think this is his representation of the work that he is doing. I don't even see his our other student members' signature or name on that report. So I think this is just for one student member at this point, his report on what he sees his role is as a student member.
Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, I agree. My understanding is that there are at least two different groups, and this also reflects Mr. Cruz Bustamante's report and not necessarily Mashai's report that she would give when she is on.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Okay. We'll move on to teaching and learning report. Dr. Joyner?
Yes, we actually are working on trying to revise and if necessary, amend all of the policies in the 600 series. And I'm working very close with Dr. Benitez and the assistant superintendents on it. So we're at our next meeting, we're going to create a task list and a timeline to get that done. Amendments only require motion, and it's in our bylaws. It doesn't require the same work that it requires to get the policy done in the first place. So hopefully we won't have a problem with that. But we're going to go through each of the policies to make sure that they handle the problems that we face now regarding academics and instruction. And I like to thank Dr. Benitez for all the work she's done behind the scenes and all the meetings we've had as two educators to try to get that done, as well as Ms. Connor, Ms. Keisha Red-Hannons, Ms. Jackson, Dr. Finley, and Dr. White. So we want to try to get it done by March, if possible. But just want to remind you, there will be amendments to existing policy. We're not developing any new policy because some of the old policies are quite good and they were quite relevant. And they also reflect the expertise that was in the district at the time that they created those policies. And that's when Dr. Benitez was an highly active member of the leadership of the school district. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any questions or comments for Dr. Joyner? Okay, we'll move on to facilities naming committee report.
Okay, well, actually, that report is reflected in governance.
Okay.
And Dr. Benitez says again, and I like to thank Mr. Wilcox for writing the language that's in red, which I think is a good way of amending something so we can have the language changes that we're asking the board to approve. And we're in our first reading of that. So I'm pretty optimistic about that as well. Concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. And Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Madam President. Are the red additions to the already approved policy, or are they replacement for other pieces in the policy?
Are you asking me or the board president?
Oh, I'm asking whoever can answer through the board president.
I think I can answer that, and I think Mr. Wilcox can be helpful as well. When you amend the policy, the standard protocol is to identify the language that's going in as well as the language that's coming out, so that there will be clarity on the part of the people who have to review it, and they'll know that And I'm going to defer the rest of this response to Mr. Wilcox, because he and I and Ms. Benitez worked together on this.
Right. And Mr. Wilcox.
I think Mr. Wilcox has his hand up.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, just to clarify, it's the things that are in red would be things that are changes from what the existing policy were. If I was suggesting that something was to be taken out, I would have it with the original language there, but with the line through so that people could see what was taken out. So I believe for that one, I wasn't suggesting anything be taken out. It's just some additions to clarify, and we can talk about it when we get to that item on the agenda, but additions to clarify the existing policy so that it works well for us.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Tracy?
Thank you. I don't have much of any report to give today, but just to say that the pilot for math 6 through 8 is going on and is going on well. We also have received over the break the materials for the reading pilot for HMH and Savas Learning. And so that, I know Ms. Hannons, they're working on ensuring that teachers who are going to pilot this program get the necessary training in order to do so. So those are, and we also have hired some extra staff. The state allowed us to use funds from the ARP ESSER funds to hire extra staff to help with outreach for attendance. So some of those things, and we've gotten great response from staff members, which is a good thing, to help make the calls to the hundreds of students who are challenged with attendance. That's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Madam President. We shouldn't go a meeting without having a written report from our superintendent, first of all, for the record. And secondly, we should set up a template for basic information that we should be receiving every board member, every board meeting. I haven't seen I don't know how often we're doing the finance reports. I don't know if I've seen one for the last couple of meetings. Maybe I just missed it. Maybe it's just me, but we should be having some general benchmarks that we should be looking at every meeting, or at least every other meeting, at least once a month, from our superintendent about the health of this district. We should never go. I mean, you know, this is a person who's running this school system, and we should not be operating in the dark. We should know what's happening with our school system. And I mean, we spend most of our time approving contracts, you know, and we get good information on that. But everything else is kind of a little sketchy. And I would hope that this board, through our president, would develop a benchmark of 5 or 6 or 10 items that we should be getting a written report on every month. We should be getting a report on student attendance. It should be one line. You know, this is how many kids we're supposed to be in the school system this month, and this is how many kids were chronically absent. You know, instead of getting that information willy-nilly once every couple of months, we should have those benchmarks set every month. I'll leave it to you to decide what those benchmarks are, but we should at least have something. We should have finance, we should have attendance, we should have teacher vacancies. You know, we've been talking about this teacher vacancy thing since me and Ed first joined the board 7 years ago. That was one of the first issues we were talking about was the fact that we weren't even getting reports on teacher vacancies. The other item was that we weren't getting finance reports. We didn't understand the health of the system. We're doing a whole lot better to finance reports now, obviously. But there's still a long ways to go. And I would hope that we would develop this before the new superintendent comes out. So when they jump into the job, they can see these board agendas, and they know what information the board is looking for every month, and what the people of this district are looking for every month. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Golson, if you develop that list of the 4 or 5 things that you named, I'll review it with you. and we can see if we can come up with a rubric. I recognize some of the information comes through the committees because you mentioned the finance report, so we see that through the finance committee. But there might be a way and an option to pull it together into one format with highlights that gives a snapshot of where we are.
I'm more than willing to kickstart the process.
It is interesting to me, Madam President, that I have been in New Haven for the past 38 years and working in New Haven Public Schools tirelessly in the past 38 years. And I have not heard anyone asking for superintendent's report, which I make it my point of duty to add to the agenda superintendent's report section. In the past, all we had was a personnel report. I've added superintendent's report. I've called staff in to give report on different things. We've had attendance, academic. And so for someone at this stage to talk about superintendent's report, and I'm not going to close my mouth. You know, I have a few months left in here, but it's very disingenuous to pretend like reports have not been given. We give the report when it's necessary to give report. It's my report, and we give it when there's necessity to give that report. We give attendance report at the end of the marking periods, academic report at the end of the marking period. So there are timelines and timeframes for giving some of these things. And we funnel our report for finance and operations through F&O to the board. And I'll hold my peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Dr. Joyner, and then Mr. Goldson.
Well, I first of all, that the item is not on the agenda, and you know we've had our meeting's been pretty long, but that's a procedural request, and that's something that will be mediated by the president of the board. I also like to remind the group that this is a deliberative body that handles the business of the board, and that the committees in a deliberative body typically are the venues that provide reports. And I also like to add that since I've been on the board, we have had more information, particularly with this superintendent in terms of attendance and other issues. And it would be inappropriate for someone to, at this time, with the item not being on the agenda, make a proposal. That's something that should be worked out with the president of the board and the rest of the board members, because it's a new direction in a sense. And it's really inappropriate for us to continue discussing it because it's really a process and a procedural issue that we did not have on the agenda. And it's probably something best worked out in governance if we were doing it the right way, based on my opinion. So I'm saying point of order because it's not an agenda item.
Point of order, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Mr. Goldson.
Thank you, Madam President. The superintendent suggested that I was being disingenuous. That's not true.
Madam, are you going to deal with the,
I'm asking for
point of order? Madam Chair, are you going to deal with my point of order?
What is the point of order, Madam President?
My point of order is that
Dr. Jordan.
we're having a lengthy discussion about an item that's not on the agenda.
Madam President, I would suggest that it is on the agenda.
And it's devolving into a personal, conflict.
Madam President, I would suggest that it is on the
You're
agenda.
correct. You're correct, Dr. Joyner, and your point of order is well taken.
Madam President, there's an item on the
if you're-
agenda that says superintendent's report.
It's the
There's an
report
item on
though.
the
It's
agenda
not.
that says superintendent. I
Mr.
could
Goldson,
respond.
you're out of
Madam
order.
President,
Mr.
Madam
Goldson, you're
President,
out of order.
Could
No.
you tell me how I'm out of order, Madam President? Please.
We're not discussing the issue of whether or not we're going to start adding written reports to the agenda. That can be an agenda item at a different point, once it possibly goes through governance. However, we're not discussing that today. It is not on the agenda. So unless you have a comment about something else,
Point of order.
you're out of order.
Madam President, point of order.
Mr.
The
Goldson,
item superintendent's report is on the agenda. That gives me the right to.
that's a different, that is not.
No, it is not. It
You're-
says superintendent.
Mr. Goldson, you're out of order, and if you continue, I'm gonna have to mute
I am
you.
not. Then I am, what is it called again? I am, objecting to your to your ruling, and I'd like to have a vote on whether, I'm out of order or not. I
Is there a
want to vote
second to
to,
Mr. Is there a
There-
second to Mr.?
there doesn't need to be a
Golson's
second.
appeal?
it doesn't need to be a second to the appeal, Madam President.
Could we have a roll call vote, Madam Chair?
Point of clarification, please.
Mr. Wilcox, you had your hand raised?
Mayor Elicker said something before me.
Just a
ahead.
process question, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Process question. If one votes yes, are we agreeing with Mr. Golson's appeal, or are we agreeing with your ruling that we move forward?
So the yes vote sustains, from my understanding, sustains the ruling of the chair. And no votes reverses the chair's ruling. So no vote would mean that we would continue to listen to Mr. Golson's concern or issue. Yes votes means that he is out of order and we move on to something else.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wilcox?
Just to also add to that, I believe that in the process of this, that you have a chance to state your rationale for it if you need to add anything else, and then we would vote.
Yes, and also the members are only going to speak once, except the chair, who can speak first in defense of the ruling and then again at the end, immediately before the vote. Thank you. So we're going to move on to the voting as to whether or not to appeal the chair's decision. Again, the yes vote sustains the ruling of the chair, and the no votes reverses the chair's ruling. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough? Dr. Yarborough?
You're on mute, Dr. Yarborough.
Or you're muted.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
No.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well.
Point of order, Madam
The
President.
decision of the chair has been sustained, Mr. Bolton.
Point of order, Madam President. The superintendent characterized my statement and questions as disingenuous. I believe that is a personal attack on my comment, and I'd like for you to rule whether that should be removed from the comments, and it was inappropriate and removed from the comments.
That's fine. I'll give to that. Please remove that from the comment, Ms. Mason. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll move on to the president's report. Just really quick, I sent a text earlier today letting you all know that tomorrow we will not be meeting with the search firm. There was a scheduling conflict, and we're trying to set up a meeting. It's looking like it's going to be the week of the 23rd, most likely the Wednesday. And so I'll keep you informed of that. And if I have any further information, I'll forward it on. We're waiting on some details from the consultant also. And so when I receive those details on how we're going to be proceeding, then I'll send that over as well. Thank you. Questions or comments? Moving on to Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you very much. We did meet, the Head Start Subcommittee met last month, but we haven't met as a body since then. Just briefly, we'll report that the attendance number, not the attendance numbers rather, but the enrollment numbers are looking much nicer. The Head Start staff's been hard at work signing people up, and people are taking advantage of this great program. Looking at the numbers that we have as our funded enrollment, 531 slots. We are currently had an enrollment as of December 8th of 427. 20 of those students were brand new at that time, and there were 47 in the mix. So we were 47 partial applications where the family still needed to bring in some information. So I'm expecting that when we talk again, have the Head Start meeting this month, that those numbers will be getting even better. So we're seeing some really good traction on the Head Start numbers, but there are still slots. So that's my
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Wilcox?
Just great
Okay.
job. Great job.
Yes.
You are phenomenal, and I appreciate everything you do.
Agreed. Thank you.
Well, it's the just to be clear, it's the staff that are signing up the folks
Well,
that are doing the great job there. But thank you. Those are the ones that are out there and making that happen. A well-run program.
thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner. Citywide School Building Committee report, Mr. Wilcox.
We have not met yet. We will be meeting, I believe, this Thursday at 4:30.
And finance and operations.
Just as mentioned previously on finance and operations, we are taking a look at the forms and the required documentation that we are having staff. So we are actively in the process of trying to, if we're going to make any changes to what's required, that we are doing it through those forms. There's also the at our next meeting, we're going to be getting some information about the financial year 2023-2024 budget process and that schedule. So that'll be happening. It's the second meetings of the month where we get the financial reports. So those will be, we'll be receiving those, and they'll be in the board packets for our next full board meeting for where the finances are for this fiscal year. There was also progress made. Ms. Red Hannons talked about the team that's working on defining the gap in terms of staffing needs and how many folks we need if we were going to be equitably staffed. So those examples of we have X number of social workers, but to meet the needs of our students, we need Y number of social workers, and what's that gap? So that group's meeting, and that includes with at least the teachers union. And I don't recall if it also includes the para union as well, but that's there's work is continuing on that. I believe they met last week. And then finally, we are talked about a series and timeline of how we're going to update our entire 3000 series, which are all our financial related policies. And so we'll be doing those over the next several meetings with the hope of updating those policies, many of which are dated. So that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any questions or comments from Mr. Wilcox? Okay, moving on to the governance report, Dr. Benitez.
Yes, so we just met, and our discussion so far has been that at the moment we are asking our colleagues who are working on policy updates to go ahead and work on those that are required. Of course, we want to complete all of them and to make sure that all of them are up to date, but we know that specifically there are some that are required because they need updated now. Ms. Jackson and I are working with the Series 5000 and Mr. Wilcox with Series 3000, and the teaching and learning team are working with Series 6000. Tonight, we are asking that we are providing you with the first reading of policies 5112A, 5131.1, 5131.7, and 7551. The first one is age of attendance. Then bus conduct is the second one. The third one is within the 5131.7 because it talks specifically about weapons and dangerous instruments. And the last one is 7551, which is the naming and renaming facilities. We we met and we worked on the first 3 ourselves within our committee, but we took the recommendations from the naming committee, facilities naming committee, in order to bring that in front of you. And that is what we have at the moment. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Questions or comments for Dr. Benitez? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the food service task group. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, thank you. The food service task group will meet this month. And at our last meeting, we spoke about the December break and the pop-up food pantry that would happen on December 28th. So I look forward to receiving a report of just an update of how that went. And I also just want to publicly thank and acknowledge the leadership of Ms. Gail Shari, just her work, me working with her specifically during this past year and working with her this year. I appreciate her leadership, her strong team, and how she works not only within the district, but with our community and state partners in order to meet the needs of our students. So I really appreciate her work, and I will miss her when she retires. That's all for my report.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Any questions or comments for Dr. Yarborough? Okay, seeing none. That is the last item on the agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
For a
Second.
second. Any
Second.
just, okay. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Good night, everyone.